Welcome to the Business of You podcast, the show dedicated to helping service entrepreneurs build a better brand to grow a bigger business. I'm your host, Michelle Griffin, and I'm here each week empowering you to put yourself out there, sharing actionable tips and inspiring stories so you can create your personal brand, grow your dream business, and build your future, all while making more income and more impact doing exactly what you love. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Welcome everybody to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Griffin, and today I'm super excited to bring back someone who I heard speak just a few weeks ago, and she was so amazing, and so many people missed out. They had to hear her again. So I said, why not bring her to the show? She's one of our founding intro guests. So welcome today, Erin Geiger. Did I say that right?
You did, Michelle.
Yes,
Thank
yay.
you
Welcome.
so much for having me. Yeah, I mean, you'd be amazed at how people pronounce my name. So it's like even Erin. Like,
really?
Or I'll say it at Starbucks and I have to spell it, because I'm like, who knows what'll come back. So yeah, you got it right.
Because I'm terrible at pronouncing people's names. So yay for me.
Gosh, same.
So anyway, you're a conversational copywriter marketer, but tell us a little bit more about what you do. I know you have a pretty new venture with your husband. So tell us all the good things you do and we'll learn.
I've been creating copy, online content, and products for, over 2 decades now. So I started during the dot-com boom of like the late 90s, early 2000s. And I always say, I'm like, if anyone listening was there during that time, let me know because we have stories to swap.
Oh, yes.
Because, oh my gosh. It was a crazy time to be in the San Francisco Bay Area when online was booming. It was crazy. So I've worked for both Fortune 500 companies, CBS, and tech powerhouses, CNET. But then I've also helped so many solopreneurs and startups kind of along the way. And I was super unique in moving out of California to Austin, Texas. I feel like 90% of California, I was laughing with someone the other day. It's like, if you're going to move out of California, you're going to move to Portland, Nashville, or Austin.
Austin, exactly.
I'm loving the entrepreneurial culture here. So now I founded Muscle Creative. I teach small businesses really to grow impact and revenue through conversational copywriting, how to have an organic discussion with copywriting from emails to sales pages, social media to increase engagement, but also obviously to convert their audience to customers, right?
Exactly.
So I'll do that through digital courses, my membership, and I do one-on-one right with you sessions too.
Exactly. No, and I love how I think you've branded yourself the copy-sation. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I have a term I coined called copy-sation. It's turning your copy into a conversation.
Yes.
So it's ongoing, right?
So much less stressful for people too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so just so people know, where was that previous talk? Fortunately, it was on Clubhouse, but sadly we couldn't record it. So that's what she's alluding to. Erin was a wonderful guest last month in our Personal Branding Mastery weekly show, and she was such a hit. And unfortunately, just time and everything, not everyone in the world could hear her. So here we are doing the exact same. It's an encore. You were so good. So basically, it's all about copy in the sense of email marketing. Today, we're going to be talking about email marketing as a tool for your personal brand that you're probably not using that is going to completely change your business. So Erin, why is email marketing so important for personal brands?
Oh my goodness. It should be right up there in the top 3, if not the top 1. I mean, people, you need to use your email to engage your audience. Why email? Email, I'm always like, listen, it sounds super old school. It's like, it's been around forever. Like, how could it possibly still be effective? Because we have so much fancy technology now. Like you just mentioned Clubhouse, I mean, it's like all these new innovative apps are coming out. It's like, really, we're still using email. Okay. It's like, it's really so great. So, and if you look at the stats, like you really can't deny it. Like McKinsey and Company did a study and they were like, email marketing is up to 40 times more effective than social media. Okay. And the same study showed that the buying process happens 3 times faster through email than it does in social media. And I don't know, can you attest to that, Michelle?
Email is my favorite. And of course, when it's done right, which we're going to talk about today, we have the slimy seals. Oh, let's not talk about the spam emails when people buy your list. Those aren't the ones we're talking about. We're talking about the ones where you're looking for them in your inbox. When they're not showing up on consistently, you're like, what happened? You're going to tell us how to do that today. Email is important. And also too, didn't you mention something about renting versus owning. You want to talk about
Yes, I
that?
will.
Yes.
Because listen, the top three excuses that I hear from people who are not using email for their business is number one, they're like, I'm on social media. So, I don't need email. Why would I? I'm growing my audience on social media, or they don't have the time, or they don't know what to write. Okay. So if we tackle the first one, so there are two things I have to say about building your business on social media instead of via email. Number one, let's say you're growing your following primarily like on LinkedIn. What if LinkedIn shuts down? And you might look at me and be like, Erin, that's never going to happen. But did we think the past year was going to happen?
And it has shut down for like a couple hours, like earlier in January, it shut down for several hours. Remember? Do you remember
Right.
that?
And it's like all these unexpected things happen, right? What if LinkedIn sticks around, but it changes focus? We've already kind of seen that happening, right? LinkedIn really was attracting more of a corporate base, but now it's competing with the other social media platforms. It's for user engagement and connection, and it's gaining traction with entrepreneurs. It's already starting to shift, right? So if it changes focus again and not to the benefit of your business, or what if your audience jumps ship? Because a lot of people are jumping off of Facebook now. It's like you kind of never know. So guess what? You're building a key aspect of your business on a platform that you don't own. Okay. Not only do you not own it, but you have zero control over it. Algorithms change, business objectives for that platform change, access changes, and you're just along for the ride. Because what if you take an action on that site that is frowned upon by that platform and you're kicked off? Like you're forced to leave the island.
LinkedIn jail is a real thing. And I know people
It's
who have landed.
Yes. LinkedIn jail, Facebook jail. People are like, I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know what I did. It's not very clear. It's not like they tell you exactly the actions you took. But yeah, you have no say in it, no control. Immediately, your audience, the customer base that you have maybe spent years nurturing is gone, just done, right? And so it's like people are usually nauseous by this time. They're just like, oh my God. Yeah, it really is. And we're always saying diversify, right? And you don't want to like put all your eggs in one basket. The second thing about growing your business basically on social media versus email is the intimacy and reach situation. There's really none on social media. Okay. Here's how I see it. Imagine you're at a party. Okay. It's outside. We're being safe. There's hundreds of people there. It's loud. Maybe there's a live band playing. There's white noise, random chatter happening around you. A friend of yours that you haven't seen in a while is at the party. You're trying to find each other. And then you're like, oh, she's by the bar. Oh, no, the other bar. They're like, she's by the photo booth now. So every time you look for her, you get interrupted. Random people are coming up to you, like chatting with you, and you can't place them. What's their name again? How do I know them? That's social media. It's like a big, loud party. It's like mostly full of random people that you don't know, or you have nothing to do with, or have nothing to do with what you do. And it's extremely difficult to find the one person you actually want to talk to. Okay. Social media.
Exactly.
So now let's take it on the other end of the spectrum. You're at an independent coffee shop. It's late afternoon. There's only a couple of other people. They're sipping coffee. Some are working on their laptops. There's a guitarist playing like mellow music. You grab your drink and you settle yourself into a comfy couch. You hear someone call your name. It's your friend. She grabs her drink. She sits down. You start chatting right away. You immediately start to catch up. That's email. It's a special, intimate connection with the exact person that you want to reach. And with social media, it's on average, I think like 10%, and that's on the high end, or less that will even see your posts, right?
Yep.
And on Instagram, only about 1.16%
So pathetic.
are engaging in that content. Facebook, it's about 0.27%. LinkedIn's around 0.54. But with email, unless you're running into like deliverability issues like spam, you can get to a 100% deliverability rate. And it varies by industry, but like your open rate is probably around like 20%, let's say. And then click-through rates could be around 2% depending upon your industry. It's just much higher than what you're going to get out of social media performance. And you can personalize it. You can use their first name on emails. You can help make them feel that connection as if you're speaking only to them. And that's super hard to do on social media. That's how I kind of compare the two.
We know why you're a copywriter, because I was just visualizing the crazy party and then the peaceful coffee house. That was a great analogy. And for people who don't believe entirely, I mean, we had that McKinsey stat, but when you look for the people who need to see the proof, that's huge. So if you have that stat or something, is that something you have as a resource? I'd love to link that in the show notes, because that just seals the deal for me. And at all the platforms and their open deliverability rates, If that doesn't sell you an email, I don't know what does. I believe in email. I love email, but for anyone else who doesn't think it, so we got to tell people. And I'm always been a firm believer. I used it heavily in my last job in events. And also too, the thing about it, it's you're in their inbox and you stay there. Social media, the feed is fleeting, right? You're never there. You're there, but maybe a second and you're forgotten. Unless they delete you, but at least you're in there, top of mind.
Yep.
I love those ideas. We know email is important, completely important. You've had us sold. You didn't have to sell me. I think you just sealed that deal. Okay, where would we start? What are some of the best practices? I know you dug deep in the what to do, what to don't. I think we'll get in a little bit of your content strategy. Tell us, give us the whole.
Because you're like, hey, okay, now I'm doing email, but how do I construct a subject line? What do I say to these people? I'm going to go into that. It's helped my business so much. Like I've used email. I mean, I've used it to sell my digital courses and membership, but 90% of the time I'm growing that relationship. It's not like sell, sell, sell. So the vast majority of the time I'm talking about free content, like my weekly podcast episodes, let's say. I'm having a conversation with my audience. I'm not talking at them. So when it comes to sell, which we should all feel fine about doing, by the way, there's a relationship there. It's not, oh, here she is selling again. They're actually interested in what I have to offer because it's been a two-way street. So now you're like, okay, awesome. I'm going to do these email things. How do I get people to open them? So I'm going to assume you don't have any deliverability issues. There's no spam issues. Your emails are being delivered to your subscribers. So if that's the case, and your email subject line is your first line of defense, okay? That and the preview text are what your subscribers see. And that's what they use to judge whether they want to use their time to click on that email or not. It's going to be like, what's in it for them? And I always go over, there's 5 aspects of like what I call super clickable subject lines that I teach. I'll just go over them really briefly.
These are the good things. These are those 5 tips you gave us last month, right?
Yeah. And so if there's like pen and paper note takers, now's the time. Or grab your OneNote, whatever you use. The first one is the element of surprise. An unexpected subject line can catch your reader off guard, but in a good way. The critical component to remember here is that it should come off as organic. It's not just for like shock and awe to get them in. This could be something from a personal experience, a professional situation, even a dream, a distant memory. Each can stop your reader in their tracks and elevate your email above the others in their inbox. One example is, and this actually was a dream I had, random, but it was, I woke up with rainbow hair and a small unicorn horn.
Did you put that in a subject line?
It's on my list to try. I haven't tried it yet.
Awesome.
It's so funny, but I'm going to throw that one in there because like, if I saw that, I'd be like, what in the world? I need to click on that. Or like that time I realized I hated X. And maybe it's something that everybody loves, but you hate it. I hate mushrooms, the kind of stuff like that. And the second one, so that's element of surprise. The second one is intrigue. So I kind of liken it to this. Like, have you ever been to a party and then while circling the room, you kind of hear something so fascinating, it stops you. You almost bump into the server with a tray full of Prosecco or whatever. It's so interesting. You wonder like, how can I shimmy my way into this conversation or more? That's intrigue. It gets your attention. So the same is true in email subject lines. It's mesmerizing. You have to know what happened. You have zero choice. You've got to open that email. So some examples of that is like, it was all fun and games until it ate my entire camera. Or he dropped this bombshell after 56 years of marriage. Or after spending like $36,000, I finally realized it was a mistake. You're just like, dang, what happened there? I need to figure that out. So that's the third one is drop some knowledge. And I kind of joke, I'm like, it's not just 90s slang. Exactly. But you can leverage the subject line to raise awareness. You can make an impact. You can educate, drop some knowledge. It could be a statistic. It could be a lesser known fact. It could mention an action or a situation going on in the world. Some examples might be nearly 13% of all adult cancers have this in common. Or, these are the 10 countries with the worst water access. Or my biggest lesson growing up in poverty, something that's going to educate somebody on something. That's like the third one. The fourth of the 5 is that you're in their head, but not in a creepy way. Okay? So you want your reader to feel like you are speaking directly to them and only to them, as no one else is on your email list. So there's a sense of intimacy in email. So it's like I compared it before. Being at a party, social media, that's vibe. Grabbing a cup of coffee with a friend, that's email. So to take this further, you can personalize the subject line with their first names. Like it could be, are you coming, Erin? Or we're about to start. Or I saw these and immediately thought of you. or this happened and I knew only you would understand, that kind of thing. And the fifth one is it gives you all the feels, right? It can be a variety of things. It can tug at the heartstrings. It could be a sense of empowerment. It can also inspire. It can shock or outrage you into action. So most of the time, this subject line appeals to your heart more than your head. It could be something that motivates you to reach your goal or propel you to take action to right a wrong, or it could play on human emotion to make that connection. So it could be, examples could be like the words hospice care rang in my ears, or why haven't you been to a protest? Or she was out of jail again and he was terrified. Something that's like, oh gosh, what's going on there? And so those are the five. And also some tips too is that try not to use title case in your email subject lines. It's going to read as a promotional newsletter. And again, for some, you might have a super engaged email list and you're going great and title case works for you. Awesome. But in general, kind of stay with that or test it out and see how it works for you, and stay away from spammy words. Like I can do a whole other training about
subject. What do you think about like co-schedules, headline checker, and most email things have spam checkers right now in it, and they'll say, this sounds a little spammy. Don't most of them have that?
They do. It's super helpful. And they'll even tell you, try to keep it to 9 words or less, maybe use one emoji, that sort of a thing. Exactly. So things like free, rich, promotion, that kind of
to their inbox or trash or spam or something. We mentioned these are subject lines, but you also mentioned the preview text was just as important. So what are your strategies for preview text?
Yeah, with preview text, it's sort of, it correlates with the subject line, right? And so I might have a email subject line, and I'll brainstorm these too. Don't come up with like one email subject line and go with it. I recommend that you just kind of like do a brain dump, and maybe I might come up with 15 to 20 email subject lines. And typically the first one I come up with is not the one. Then I'll come up with the preview text, and it'll be usually a little bit expands upon the subject line. Like, couldn't believe this happened. And then the subject line, even the preview text will be something that goes along with that. Typically what I do for that. So good question, because a lot of people, they do see that preview text before they open an email. And then I always say create a subject line bank too, so that you have subject lines to pull from. So maybe like take 10 minutes and kind of do a brain dump and think of like relationships, memories, look at photos in the photo bank on your phone, everyday happenings. Kids are a treasure trove of this stuff.
Exactly.
Jot down anything that comes to mind, and it can be in phrase form, because these thoughts can actually morph into email subject lines. And especially, as I'm going to go into in a minute, if you're making your emails more conversational and you want to actually make a connection with your audience, then your email subject lines, if it's like a memory or something that has happened or something your kid said, that's going to get attention. People are going to connect with you. So if you kind of do this and you have like an email subject line bank that you can kind of go back to and be like, oh yeah, and that goes along with what happened to me this week, or that goes along with the new blog post.
And then you can update it. And here I have told you I'm an email nerd, because I have 2 other Gmail accounts devoted just to follow really good email marketers, because I love to study the craft of copy and content. So look at those for inspiration. See what, is prompting you to open it, and you can be like a student there. So that's some of the ways I tend to do it too. Do you do that as well?
I do. I'm using OneNote right now, and I'll have a section that's emails I love. And so I'll do it 2 ways. Sometimes I'll copy and paste certain text that was really clever. I'll do that. And then sometimes I'll have like a folder, and I'll just like move them to a folder in my email.
You can look at something, get inspiration, and then spin it for you. We have covered the most important thing. I kind of think subject lines or the preview, I equate to like a website headline and subheadline. If you want them to get that click and move on, we got to have them with an intriguing, irresistible. And so those are 5 amazing tips. So write those down and we'll have them in the show notes, but those are something we should always frame all our subject lines. So thank you for that. So once we get the subject line, right, and we're hoping they're going to open us up and click it, then they got to read it. They got to read it to hopefully click for more. So is that what you want to discuss next? Because you really told us some gold last month about the content structure, I think is what it was, right?
Yeah. So I call it the anatomy of an engaging email. People are opening your emails. Woo, it's time to party. But what should they say? How should they be structured? First, you're going to connect with a story, an anecdote. It could be a quick narrative. You got to get them interested by telling a story or anecdote that they can most likely relate to or see themselves in. I kind of mentioned this in Clubhouse and I got comments of it, so I'll mention it again. Hypercolor, the t-shirts were a big craze in the 90s. In a recent email, I likened the hypercolor t-shirt of the early 90s to going after the new flashy thing that it could impact your business, only to realize that sweat marks by your armpits made by the heat reactive material.
Not going to happen.
Back to regular cotton, you win. For those of you who are too young to remember hypercolor, they had heat reactive material. So if you had like a pink hypercolor t-shirt, if you put your hand on it, it would turn purple. So wherever the heat. So if you sweat, unfortunately, it would also turn color. I went so far in this email, I included a picture of me at 14 years old in my hypercolor t-shirt.
That's awesome. We should put that in the show notes as a reminder.
There's the story part, right? Then it brings me to the second part of the email. So you're going to tie that story to the point of your email, whether it's your latest content, your latest promotion, or a tip that you're sharing. I tied that story, that memory, to my latest podcast episode, which was all about how to use email to increase your revenue, even though it's been around the block a few times, right? It might not be shiny to you anymore. And I was like, gosh, I see business owners give email the side eye, but and they cozy up to social. But to continue with the 90s theme, I compared emails to Dr. Dre. And I was like, they're full of substance and experience. They work with everyone and they have huge reach. Pretty much you can tie any topic into what is going on in your business, right? And so you're like, this is what happened when I was 14. This is what, and then you kind of dive in and relate it to your content. And then third, you're going to tell them what you want them to do. Okay. This is your CTA or a call to action. So many times I hear people say like, well, it's obvious. I'm talking about my podcast. I should listen to my podcast. So no, you actually have to spell it out to people. This can be reiterating what you talked about in the body of your email. Do you want them to go listen to your podcast? Do you want them to sign up for your webinar, grab your download? Like, what is it? You got to spell it out. And I like to ask a question that has to do with the subject of the email at the end as well. Sometimes it has to do with my business. Sometimes it's purely to connect. Getting people to reply to your emails, it's not only great for your engagement, but it also signals the spam bots to give your email the go, green light, this one's good, it's legit, because the engagement factor tells them that people like your email, so it keeps you out of the spam folders.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then you're going to wrap up the email with, whatever is natural to you, like a little ender, like see you next week or cheers. I say thanks for reading, whatever kind of works for you. And part of the email wrap up is your PS.
Oh, yes.
I see a lot of people, I know you do this. I see a lot of people that don't.
People will always go to the PS to scan it too, right?
Exactly. This is for your scanners. And so you have a PS there. I think it's critical because people can like skim down to the end. People take a quick look at the beginning of the email and they skim on down to the end and there's the PS. So the PS can correlate with your story or the point of the email, or you can use it to tell them about something else. Just make sure it's still related. My recent PS was related. And then I talked about my email membership. It kind of came full circle. The key to writing engaging subject lines in emails is really to talk with your audience. We talked about copy station a little bit in the beginning of this conversation. It really is using copy as a conversation. It's why I call my weekly email the of all emails. So
I love it. Yes.
It's meant to include the reader. You want it to be an ongoing conversation with them, not at them. So they feel like you're speaking with them. They're more likely to become what I call heart-eyed customers. We do get all sterile and speak at them like a robot, which just seems to happen. All of a sudden, a wall goes up. And it's hard to take that down. You really want to connect with them. That's kind of like the 5 things I go through for email subject lines and the anatomy of how I create emails. And I hope that helps your audience.
God, it is so helpful. I mean, people would have to pay a course sometimes for all the value you're giving. This is great frameworks that people can use because either sometimes people are too, like you said, brands are very, very guilty of it. Some of these retail e-commerce brands. And also I want to ask you about length. I see way too long emails. What's your take on length of emails?
Yes, it is harder to write a shorter email than it is to write a longer one. It takes what it takes because being a copywriter myself, sometimes it's going to take a longer email. And if what you're talking about, you're like, listen, they need this information, it's part and parcel of what I'm talking about, that's fine. But just make sure that you structure it in a way that it's easy to digest. So a lot of white space, so you're going to do 1 or 2 lines, space, another couple of lines, space. So it's easy. Bold the sections that you really want to get across. Sometimes I use like Giphies or memes in my emails as well to break it up and to kind of have that entertainment factor as well. And I'll usually have an image that also promotes, like I'll have an image for my podcast or something like that. But every image that I put in there, which I only do 1 or 2 because we don't want to get spammy, I have a link. So every image should link out. Even if you
Definitely.
put in like a meme, it should link to whatever you're talking about
Ex-
for that. I would say a lot of white space, bolding, use an image or two, don't go crazy, and then go back. So I write my emails in Google Drive, right? The Google Docs or whatever. I write them and then I go back and I start chopping away. I did a post on LinkedIn recently, just the other day, I think, where it's like, you're probably going to delete your intro. Like usually the intro is not needed because it's like the foundation and you're building it up. And it's like, no, especially in emails, drop them right in the middle of the conversation that they're just like, what's going on? And so write it out and then start chopping away. Cause you're right. You don't want a novel for an email.
Yes.
People aren't going to read it. So try to make it as short as you can. But then if it is a little bit more heftier, just use those tips I gave you to try to make it more digestible.
Yeah, because if it's interesting and like more story based and relatable, of course, to them, they're going to read it. So you don't have to be short, but you shouldn't always be long. Mix it up is key. We'll get into some of the mistakes and then your top 3 overall takeaways. But we talked about what will I say in our talk last month. You said you could use your blog. In your case, you use your podcast episodes in your weekly emails. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
And then you wrap a story around it. And that's a great way twofold to have content for your email, then to get some extra attention on the podcast. If our audience here has a blog or a podcast, what's your best takes to use that weekly content so it's fresh? Every email is fresh and it's not just, here's my blog post, here's my podcast episode this week.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of morph this into the mistakes thing too.
Oh, definitely.
People start an email, but then they're not consistent, right? So one thing that I say is like, and I get it, it's tough, right? It's like, oh gosh, what am I going to say to these people every week? But 2 things there. One is if you pick a podcast, a video series, or a blog, let's say written word, you're going to have something to talk about every week. Okay. It's just going to make it so much easier for you instead of just trying to think of like, what in the world, And so if you have one of those, like, that's what I do. Like I look at my podcast episode and I look at what the person says. I create everything first before I write my email. My process is I'm going to create the show notes and everything for my podcast. I'm kind of like, I'm in it. I'm in the trenches of that episode. I remember exactly what the person said, what they were talking about. So then it's fresh in my mind. And then I think about my email and I'm like, okay, this person was talking about this challenge. Okay, what happened in my life that could correlate? And then that's how I tie it in. And it could be silly because people like silliness sometimes. And then it shows that you're human. That's what I would say there. And then along with the mistakes is not being consistent, but then also people get stressed out about it. So they're just like, okay, I have to do it every single week. You don't have to do it every single week. Like pick a consistency that works for you. If it's like a quarterly update, awesome. Start there, and then maybe work your way to monthly, then maybe work your way to twice a month. Just pick the cadence that is realistic for you at that time. And then you can slowly, gradually work your way into maybe weekly. I know some lists, they like to get emails 3 times a week, and other people don't. They want it like a quarterly digest. It's a lot of testing with your industry and your niche and your particular audience as well. And there's no, unfortunately, golden bullet that I can tell people, do this and your email, your open rates are going to skyrocket. It really is a lot of testing because everybody's audience is quite different.
And also too, when you get consistent, people get used to it and expect, and that'll help your open rates. Not just like, who is this person? Stay top of mind consistently, whatever that consistent looks like. If you come in and out of the scene, people are going to get confused, delete you. You got to stay put and stay forefront, whatever that is. Great tips, so much information. This is just like a mastery mini class today so far. I'm loving this. It's bringing so much value to our listeners here. As part of this podcast, one of the things that I always wanted to make it, and the premise is interview subject matter experts like yourself and giving them actionable, achievable, the stories these people have and their tips. The takeaways, we're all so busy. I want everyone to have 3 takeaways on your subject matter. What are your top tips or takeaways, Erin, about email marketing for personal brands?
I would say, first of all, do not be intimidated. You can construct your email for you. Don't look at what other people are doing and you're like, okay, that's what I have to do, because it's your personal brand. It's you. That's what should be coming through in your emails. Always remember that. And then just start start brainstorming your email subject line bank that I talked about earlier. Just start writing stuff down that happened in your life, because not only is it going to help you with your email subject lines, but it's going to help you with those stories that I talked about. And you're going to be more apt to have this. You're not going to be starting from scratch. You're going to have these ideas that are already there that you can then correlate into the story of your email. And also have fun with it. Email should be fun, and it should be just like this cool way to really connect with your audience, right? And ask them questions. I had an email, gosh, I can't even remember what it was, but somehow I brought up a story of the family car that we had growing up. And I superimposed a picture of me like on this car. And at the end, I was like, what was your family car? Tell me, reply to this email. And by the way, tell them, reply. Don't just ask a question. Be like, ask the question, be like, reply to this email. Tell me, what was your family car? So just have fun with it and just use it as a connecting tool and not so much a selling tool. So I think if you look at it that way, it'll take the pressure off.
And same with social media. I know we're advocating for email, but really anything you do with your market, looking at as a relationship building, and the sales will come. Just be that consistent relationship builder. With such great advice. I love these 3 top tips. One of the other things I like to ask my guests, because I believe we all have so much wisdom to share, what is your favorite saying, either personal or professional, like a mantra that you really believe and tell yourself daily or often to help you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I love this one, but Brené Brown uses it a lot too, but it's like the one that I even have a t-shirt that has it, but the one basically like, if you're in it and you're doing the work, what other people say doesn't matter. If you're in the arena, that's what it was.
Oh yeah. That was a Teddy Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt was the original quote. I was thinking, I'm like, it was this guy, but yeah. So if you're in the arena, like if they're not in the arena, what they say does not matter. Exactly. You know, I love that one. And I also love the one by Nelson Mandela, which is like, don't live a small life. Like don't play small. Like you're not helping anybody out. Those are my top 2.
Especially for the audience you serve, the small business. Well, tell us, Erin, because as you were telling me all this, I was like, she's got it. And when you tell us, you know, where to find you, I want to encourage everyone to follow you on LinkedIn and social for great social media content and copy. Sign her for her email list for a great inspiration and what to do. And I have to give her a shout out. Her podcast is so good. It's about 1 year old and it's so good. You have such a natural presence. And it's just one of those ones you just want to binge listen to all of them. Go listen to that. But tell us exactly where to find all these things I just mentioned.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Yes. Our small business, big mindset podcast. It's a labor of love. So that you can find on every podcast streaming platform out there, or you can go to musclecreative.com/podcast. Musclecreative.com is my website, my home base. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Muscle Creative Co. and LinkedIn as Erin Patricia Geiger and Muscle Creative as well there. And you can find out everything that I'm doing on those spots.
Yeah. And right now, as of this recording, I believe you're helping out on Clubhouse in the Power Hour, right? On Thursday mornings?
I am. Every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Central, I am a co-host of the Power Hour. So it's an amazing hour. We'll have a lot of entrepreneurial guests on there, whether it's increasing your sales or helping your marketing. We have a fitness person coming up this next week. So we kind of run all the bases as far as helping you to grow your own business.
Yeah. And with your co-hosts, if you have a chance, if you're on Clubhouse, go check them out and you can ask them questions. They're all very helpful and knowledgeable. Erin, thank you so much for coming back as an encore. You know, this has been so good. And now we've got this recorded. We have the show notes we can share with all those people. I know some of our direct friends on LinkedIn were asking, so they're going to have it. I just appreciate your time. And I can't wait to get you back sometime, maybe on a LinkedIn Live. Our sister show is also a LinkedIn Live. So we'll have to talk about that down the road. But thank you again. And I appreciate your time and we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Care. Thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks so much for tuning in today. You know, we definitely need more impactful entrepreneurs like you out there. So if you'd like to learn more about how I can help you build your personal brand to grow your business, please check out yourbrandyourbusiness.com. And until next time, you have a brand to build, a message to share, and people to impact. Now go put yourself out there and watch the business of you grow.